What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and after week 1 of fantasy football, I think this is the best time to make trades because everyone is overreacting to 1 week of data. So today we are going to be talking through my 5 must-sell players heading into week 2 of the fantasy football season. I just recorded the part 1 of this where we talked through my 8 must-buys. This is the other part of that here, where these are players that I would be looking to sell after just 1 week of football. So with that being said, if you enjoy my shit down below, subscribe, leave a like, let's go. Now, our first sell here is going to be Nick Chubb. And we've had, a lot of pushback on our Nick Chubb takes this offseason. He had a fine week 1. But you drafted him in the first round as a top 5 running back, which was the whole point of us not liking Nick Chubb this year, is that you're drafting him in the first round. He has never finished as a top 5 running back in points per game, and you need a ceiling to RB1 overall upside. The way he gets there is receiving upside. Now, yes, he had 4 targets, but I think it was sort of fluky this week, and I would use it as an opportunity to sell. Now, of course, there's not a ton of urgency here. I just want to get out of the way. There's not a ton of urgency. I'm not saying if you have Nick Chubb, go out there and sell for the first offer. Okay, when we're talking about these sells, I could make this video and list, like a Kendrick Bourne or something, a guy who just was a flash in the pan. You're not going to really trade any of those guys. Nick Chubb, to me, feel free to ride him out as an RB1 rest of the year. But if you can salvage the value you used on him, say in the first round, and get somebody of similar value to him, I personally would. Now, the reason why this is because Nick Chubb's role didn't change. We thought, right, maybe he could get a bigger receiving role. Now, yes, he did again. He got 4 targets, which was good, but in terms of his usage, it wasn't all that crazy. Where if we compare Nick Chubb's route percentage, which is just your route participation, how many of the dropbacks are you running a route on, and your target per route run, we can see that his usage in terms of his route participation was exactly the same as it's been since last year. Last year, he actually had a 41% route participation. In week 1 this year, he had just a 35%. Elite in the NFL is like 60% plus. He still was not given that role. Jerome Ford was out there in the 2-minute drill, and he was out there on third downs. Now, reason why he was using the passing game so much is because it was a rain game. You can't push the ball downfield. He had a 33% target per route run. Now, we saw that last year. That happened in week 10 of 2022. He had a 31% route participation, 31% target per route run. That's going to happen in the NFL. Nothing is going to be sticky week to week. You're going to have some outlier games, and in a game like this, in week 1, where you want to future Nick Chubb and you can't push the ball downfield in the rain, it makes sense to give him a 33% target per route run. But that would have been, that would have blown first out of the water last year when it comes to target per route run. For his entire career, he's a 15% guy. In 2022, he was a 13% guy. We can pretty much safely assume that he is going to have the exact role he's had this entire time, where he's been a mid to late second round pick in fantasy football as a guy who's going to run around 35 to 40% of the routes and have about a 15% target per route run. That is not a guy who's going to catch 50 plus balls. That is not a guy who is really going to challenge for RB1 overall. So personally, if I could move off of him, I would. Again, you don't have to. You can ride it out. He's going to sleepwalk his way to a top 12 finish. But to me, I don't know that he has that upside that we're truly chasing here. So if you can trade him, I would. And some pieces that I like sort of trading him for. Now, this is what we did in the first video. I'm very curious to know if you guys like this format, but we have a trade chart here from Peaked in High School. He is a guy who made his content on Reddit for a while. He's since moved to like Draft Sharks, and he's doing his own thing. Early on in my YouTube career, I used Reddit a ton. Things that have sticked: Peaked in High School's trade value chart and Subvert to Down's kicker defense rankings. When we look at this Peaked in High School, we see Nick Chubb right here. If I could sell Nick Chubb for Bijan Robinson or Tony Pollard trade up, I would do that literally instantaneously. Now, of course, those aren't super realistic, right? Like, you're not going to, it's not very often that you're going to be able to just do a running back for a running back straight up. But if I could sell Nick Chubb for Stephon Diggs, if I could sell him for CeeDee Lamb, I would. If I could sell Nick Chubb for Devontae Adams and like a piece, I probably would. If you could get Calvin Ridley and a piece on top, I would. Now, I don't know how realistic that is, but I also like the idea of selling all the way down to Josh Jacobs, selling all the way down to ETN, selling all the way down to Ramondre Stevenson, Nick Chubb, and then getting a wide receiver on top. So if you could do like Nick Chubb for Ramondre Stevenson, and say like Deebo Samuel, I would be all over that. If you could do Nick Chubb for, say, Travis Etienne, you go a little bit lower down to, say, like Drake London, I would love that. Or even Michael Pittman, like Michael Pittman and Travis Etienne for Nick Chubb, I would do that all day long. Like, I love the idea of downgrading Chubb and netting a wide receiver in the process of going to Jacobs, Etienne, Ramondre. You can even go down to Gibbs, Breece, Walker. Just make sure you're getting a sizable plus on top of that. Now, again, you do not have to sell Nick Chubb. If you can't get a good offer for him, kick the tires on a couple of RB-needy teams, and if nothing makes sense, then just hold on to him. He's going to be an RB1 rest of the year, and that's just fine, but I don't know that he has this like league-crushing upside that we sort of were hoping for in terms of the passing game usage here. Now, our next player we're going to sell or recommend selling is Garrett Wilson. Now, I think a lot of people are going to be recommending this one, and I have to say, you don't have to trade this player with a ton of urgency, right? If no one's going to pay up for Garrett Wilson or pay close to what you paid for Garrett Wilson, then just move on. But I think it's worth kicking the tires and exploring your options just because he had a decent game. He had 14.4 PPR points. He had a really crazy touchdown catch. The Jets won. The Jets might upgrade their quarterback with like a Jameis Winston or an Andy Dalton, and that's kind of floating out there. If you can take any of this optimism and package it up and sell Garrett Wilson, you should. And it sucks to say. I'm a Jets fan. I've honestly, I've been pretty beat up about Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles. It just absolutely sucks. And it just means this passing offense is going to be absolutely brutal. Where this is a stat from Josh Norris. Now, this isn't going to hold over an entire year. Don't get it twisted. Garrett Wilson's not going to be a wide receiver 60 unstartable guy. He went from rookie to second year. We can expect that to be a jump forward. But he goes... Dude, looking at that catch and just like the usage he had, he would have been a top 5 wide receiver this year with Aaron Rodgers. That's not up for debate, and it really, really sucks. But with Zach Wilson, he goes from a top 5 wide receiver to a back-end wide receiver 2, like kind of how we felt about Drake London coming into the year, where it was like a good wide receiver on a bad offense. You know, Drake London with Desmond Ridder. We now have Garrett Wilson with Zach Wilson. I'd say it's a little bit better than kind of how we felt about Drake London coming into the year. To me, he's a back-end wide receiver 2. And that really sucks. Zach Wilson is not good. They're going to run the ball a ton. So if I could swap him out for like almost any preseason ADP top 3 round player, I absolutely would. Where if we look at sort of where he's at, Garrett Wilson, on this chart, I mean, look, this chart isn't perfect. I did want to say that as well. It's not perfect. This is just a stock trade value chart. If this is not how your league works, it's all good. It's impossible for me to find something that's universal for everybody. This is about as close as I can get anything. If you could sell Garrett Wilson for ETN all day, for T. Higgins all day, if you can do it for Josh Jacobs all day, any wide receiver in this range like Waddle, Devonta Smith, any of these guys all day, I would sell him for Mark Andrews or Kelsey all day very easily. I would also say I would sell T. Higgins for Ramondre. I would sell him for Jahmyr Gibbs. Garrett Wilson for Ramondre, Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know if I said T. Higgins there. I would honestly sell Garrett Wilson for Kenneth Walker. If you get a piece on top of Kenneth Walker, I would like that. Same thing with Breece Hall, but if it's just a straight up, I think that you can get away with that. It's just not good. Now, again, don't go crazy and like sell Garrett Wilson for Brandon Ayuk or Christian Watson or Debo or like even like Amari Cooper, Metcalf here. You can kind of just hold him again. Again, he's going to be a wide receiver 2. But if you can cash out and get somebody that isn't all that far off, I would try, but that might not be there. You know, maybe you can approach a Deontay Johnson team, especially if you're like stacked at wide receiver, and you can maybe sort of see what you could get for him. Now, I will say as well, you guys might be asking about Breece Hall. I don't have Breece Hall as a sell here. I think my buddy Cam's Not Sober is actually his name on Twitter. I think he put it really well when it comes to Breece Hall. You're not going to get, like, Breece Hall gets affected similarly, but not the same, where, you know, Breece Hall goes from a guy where we just watched him. If he had Aaron Rodgers there, we're talking about a top 5 running back rest of season. But for me, he's still like an RB1 or like a back-end RB1, which is still very good where you got him. And Cam says it really well here. He quote tweets Mason, which I know a lot of you guys like, and I have no beef with Mason, but he's saying, you know, try to sell Breece Hall. And, like, yes, you can sell Breece Hall, but the only guys that I'm taking over Breece Hall definitively rest of season are Etienne, Pollard, Bijan, McCaffrey, Eckler, and, like, maybe Saquon. I think it's close between him and, say, I mean, you can't do it for Pollard. You can't do it for McCaffrey, Eckler. I don't think you can do it for Saquon. I'm not trading Breece for Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs or Joe Mixon or Ramondre as much as I like those guys. So, yeah, there's like a very small list of guys that I would trade away Breece straight up for, and they aren't really on the table in terms of swapping straight up for Breece. So, with that being said, I think you just hold on to Breece Hall. I think you simply just hold. He's a back-end RB1. As much as this offense is now a little bit capped in terms of its scoring, Breece Hall last year with Zach Wilson was an absolute monster. He can do the same here. We've seen guys before. We've seen Jonathan Taylor have an RB1 overall season with like the corpse of Carson Wentz on his team. It's not as much of a death sentence for a running back because it doesn't take Zach Wilson a ton of skill to just hand the ball off to Breece Hall, whereas we need him to be in the pocket, go through his reads, and then find Garrett Wilson downfield to actually complete a pass and get the ball into his hands. So Breece Hall, it's negatively affecting him, but not in even the remotely the same magnitude as it is Garrett Wilson here. Now our next sell is Alexander Mattison here. And he is who we thought he was, a dead zone running back. He got 14 touches. He was the clear, workhorse back here. But if it wasn't for a touchdown, he had under 50 total yards. He had a bad day here, an inefficient day. We're going to see much more of this from Alexander Mattison. And when you're inefficient and you're not going to use the most of your touches, your volume is going to slowly dwindle as the season goes on. So if I could add to Alexander Mattison, if I could find like a running back needy team as well, like if someone has Dobbins and they're just like absolutely, they really want a running back fill-in, I would love the idea of selling Alexander Mattison. If you could sell Alexander Mattison for, I would do him for Pittman. I would probably, I would love to add to Alexander Mattison. Like, if I could take Alexander Mattison, and let's say you got, like, a Puka Nacua, you could, like, add to a Puka Nacua, or you could add to, say, like, a George Pickens, who we're going to talk about up next here, and you can go up, and you can upgrade to a Walker, Breece Hall. You could get up to a Ramondre. Like, I'm not sure what you could add to him, but if you can kind of fill a need, or even if they're looking for a running back, maybe you add, you could do Alexander Mattison and say add a George Pickens or a Nacua, and you go up and you buy, a T. Higgins or something. I think that is all very much the play here. Now, our next sell is going to be George Pickens here. George Pickens, I think there's a lot of optimism here, and this is one I'd be selling with urgency because this is one where you're kind of timing the market here as much as I don't really love trying to do that. The Deontay Johnson injury is on everybody's mind, and this is just a random Twitter account, but this is what a lot of the sentiment is in the fantasy community. Deontay Johnson goes down, fire up George Pickens. Now, here's the thing. NFL wide receivers do not react in the same way as handcuff running backs. A running back goes down, the next one comes up, and he absorbs all of that opportunity, the carries, the targets, all of that out of the backfield. When a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson gets hurt, somebody absorbs those routes, right? Calvin Austin's now going to slot in there and get a ton of routes. George Pickens was already running a full diet of routes. He's still going to run the same amount of routes. Those targets now, you still have to get open and command a target. Those targets don't just magically go to George Pickens now. They just get evenly distributed, essentially, between Pickens, Freiermuth, Robinson, Austin, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. I wouldn't expect a massive uptick in George Pickens' usage, especially when George Pickens, his entire issue has been in this Matt Canada offense, running nothing but wind sprints the entire game. And that's what happened this past Sunday, where he had the highest ADOT on the team. Deontay Johnson's career ADOT is like 9.4 yards behind the first down marker. George Pickens has never had an ADOT in his career, it's a short NFL career, but below the 10-yard marker, whereas Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Freiermuth all had ADOTs under 10 yards this weekend. The guys who operate in the area of the field that Deontay Johnson does is not George Pickens. His role doesn't really change much from this news. So if there is somebody out there that thinks Pickens gets a huge upgrade because of the Deontay Johnson injury, find that guy and sell George Pickens to him because week one was not good at all for him. Our concerns was that he was a down-the-field player that could not command a real wide receiver 2 or better target share, right? 20% plus target share is really what we need to start starting somebody on a weekly basis. George Pickens gave us nothing. In a game where Deontay Johnson left, his target share 16% in week 1, 2022, also 16%. Target per round, he had 15%. He had a target 50% of his routes. 2022, 14%. Same thing. Yards per run was 0.75. He was not efficient there. 1.38 in 2022. Also poor efficiency. 55 PFF grade. Awful. 2022, under 70 PFF grade. Still awful. Points per game as a rookie was 9.8. His points this week was 8.6. I know it's not going to happen right away, but he really didn't show us much here. He's going to be in the same role, and if you can sell on the optimism of the Deontay Johnson injury, I think you simply have to. Now, I think some people are going to look at I believe he had 7 targets here, and they're going to say, oh, well, he had 7 targets, he was fed. Again, that was still just a 16% target share. They were down the entire game. Kenny Pickett threw it 46 times. That's not sustainable over an entire year. You need to have a big market share, and he does not have that. So if I could sell him, again, I absolutely would. Where if we look at the trade value chart and we find George Pickens here, let's see, where is he at? George Pickens is right here. If I could sell George Pickens straight up, if you're a team that's like 1-0, and you're going to be good, and let's say you have like options off the bench plus 1 or 2, and like you're sort of chilling, I would sell George Pickens straight up for Jonathan Taylor. I would sell him straight up for Cooper Kupp. If I could sell him for Michael Pittman straight up, I would as well. I would love to add to Pickens. Again, we were talking like Allgeier and Mattison. If you can add like a Rachaad White, Montgomery, Mattison, Sanders to Pickens, and then go up and grab, say, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, even, like a Deebo Samuel or a lower level like Tyler Lockett here, something in that area where, again, you add like one of these dead zone-ish backs to George Pickens and get a huge upgrade. I think that is very much something you should be doing if you have George Pickens. Now, our last must-sell player here is Tyler Allgeier. Now, we have to understand when we add context to sort of what he did on Sunday, a lot of his volume came in the fourth quarter when the Falcons had a lead here, where Bijan had 9% of the rush attempts in the fourth quarter. Allgeier had 82% of the rush attempts in the fourth quarter. I am not sure. Right before then, Allgeier had just 40% of the rush attempts. I am not sure that, the Falcons need to have these huge leads every week. Not even huge leads, but just like 10-plus point leads for Allgeier to be relevant. The issue is I don't think they're going to be beating up on a lot of teams like they were the Panthers, a bottom 5 team in the NFL. So when we get to stiffer opponents, and we know with rookies, we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs in the bye video, but rookies only get more volume as they go, we're going to see Bijan get even more opportunity. Allgeier is not going to be this, he's not going to handle, I know he had 100% of the attempts inside the 5, but that's not going to stick over an entire year. You don't just simply pull out your best player inside of the 5-yard line. Is he going to be annoying and get half of those? Sure, but I see people kind of throwing around like he could be this year's Jamal Williams as a guy you can start every week next to Bijan Robinson. I would pump the brakes there. To me, he's a touchdown-dependent RB3 that I don't really feel all that comfortable just putting right in my lineup. So if you have a guy out there, I don't know why I'm struggling to talk here, but if you have a guy out there that thinks that he can grab Allgeier off of your team and instantly put him in his running back spot, maybe he has J.K. Dobbins and he's just down horrendous, and you can maybe try and sell him on that. I absolutely would. Where again, if you have one of these God squads that we were talking about, I would love to swap Allgeier straight up for I don't know if this is on the table. I think that they're actually sort of weighting Allgeier pretty low here in terms of what he's probably thought about on the market. Right, he's all the way down, all the way down here. But if you could sell him straight up for Kupp, or you could sell him straight up for Jonathan Taylor, I would. I don't know if those are on the table, or you could add to Tyler Allgeier. If you could add, I'm trying to think of something dusty. If you could add Tyler Allgeier and Brandon Cooks and get there, I think you should. If you could swap Allgeier for say, DeAndre Swift is lower on this list. If you could sell Tyler Allgeier for DeAndre Swift, I don't know if this is on the table, but if you could sell Tyler Allgeier for DeAndre Swift and then also grab Elijah Moore, I would absolutely love that. If you could sell him for just maybe you could add Tyler Allgeier and a Hunter Henry and go make an upgrade at tight end somewhere in this area, right? Where you add, say Hunter Henry or one of these tight ends that kind of popped plus Allgeier, and you go get one of these guys in this area. Anything like that. Maybe you add Pickens and you can go get a Kenneth Walker, Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall. Maybe you could even get pretty lavish here, and you could add a Garrett Wilson plus Tyler Allgeier and go get, say a Ridley, Devontae, Jacobs, and Etienne. Something in that area is what I'd be looking to do with Tyler Allgeier. Now that's going to do it for us today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. I also have my rest of season rankings coming out tonight, so if you want to be making trades, you kind of want to see how I'm viewing players rest of the season, those rankings will be out tonight. Be on the lookout for that. Patreon.com/RonStewart. You'll have that in the description, in the comment section down below. As always, if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my